to answer. Hi, Abba. Good that you're here. Diana, welcome. Many familiar people there. Okay, so we passed 2 o'clock. Let's start. Welcome to the first session of the webinar week on the post-COVID-19 crisis, for which we have this week several contributions to address the challenges we face as universities. I have an introductory presentation to set the scene. So let me share my screen here. One moment. Here we are. And then I will put it on presentation mode. I hope you can see this. Yeah, so the setting for the webinar week is also our project Digital Pro, which is in a response to the COVID crisis by several universities that we gathered in a partnership. But first of all, let me introduce for today. So after my introduction, we will have Wiebe Dijkstra presenting the contribution of Delft University to the Digital Pro project on blended education, followed by Alba Sangra from the book Catalunya on online education, and then we have still time for questions and answers. Tomorrow we have further 3 contributions, and please remind that we will start at 1:30 then, so half an hour early, as we have several contributions there for Ormond Simpson and Hannah and Eamon. And then the third day, where we will also, after the contributions from Anadolu University and Tampere, will wrap up the outcomes of this week. To set the COVID crisis as a framework of the contributions for this week, just looking back at last year or the past year, in May 2020, surveys show that universities then by 95% have gone immediately to online and distance learning due to the lockdown, facing in the second wave in October. Again, well, first not the lockdown, but allowing only a few number of students on campus in combination with students online, which we address with hybrid education, and then going back to a full lockdown, going back to online and distance education. What happened is that teaching staff was very much challenged by offering education online, including also extreme workload, but also catching up on expertise needed to provide online education. And in effect, well, as much as it was appreciated, online education, there was also students first, well, appreciating it for the first months, but then at a certain point demanding quality education, as the online education was not living up to their expectations or to continue education that way. So we saw even protests in Amsterdam about depressed students and students claiming we want to have real education instead of online education. This is more or less a call to the universities to well, improve the education, but on the other hand also embrace online education, but improve it, enhance it. Without online education, we couldn't have served the students at all last year. So we really have to embrace online education, but we have to improve it. Like I said, educational institutions were challenged. They had to improvise, and overall digital literacy was a need. And we also learned that we should not face another year or a next pandemic and being not prepared for this. The Commission, the European Commission, gave also the Joint Research Center in Seville a task of doing a study on the effect of the COVID-19 on the education system. They had 2 main key challenges that they addressed. Was first, how to make up to the learning loss. So for students that change to a different system of learning, have not been served to an optimum. We see this, for example, in the Netherlands, where we had 8% more students in university compared to the years before. Partly that was due to the fact that students were not taking a year off like they normally do, but also a bigger part was also to students that they give the benefit of the doubt, that like they couldn't do the assessment or the examinations as they would like to normally, and that gives them the benefit of the doubt, even when not fully prepared as normally for the university. So we have to make up for that learning loss. And secondly, for the future, we need to find and learn about alternative methods of delivering teaching and learning at a good level of quality. Looking at from an open university perspective in this sense is that it was concluded that the highest priority is that with the further education of educators in digital didactics that is the highest priority, educate the educators. And how to do that is by offering them further expertise and experiences to build on. Build also on new methodologies, well-considered digital didactics that are research-based, create interaction, generate interaction, debate, and dialogue in synchronous as well as an asynchronous education. Activating education, so engaging students needs attention. Extending and enriching programs with virtual mobility, and make sure that you make use of safe software. So a lot of expertise is needed in this field to enhance education and provide quality online education. Main message here is that we should not copy campus education, but use new modes of teaching and enhance education.
George, we cannot hear you. At least I cannot hear you. Stefan, can you hear George?
No, I can't. I'll just actually walk over to him and ask him to unmute if he doesn't hear us now.
Yeah.
Oh, so up till what part? Because it automatically muted me at some part, I guess. For how long was it that you didn't hear me?
Half a minute. So really not long.
Okay, well, let me share the slide again.
You were at the end of when
Did you see this?
At the end of this one.
Okay, fine. So let's continue here. So what is needed is share of expertise. There is a wealth of expertise there. Also good practices that needs to be shared amongst educators. We have to face the challenge of digitalization. Was it before an option to postpone and continue education as traditionally is done? Now we have to face the challenges of privacy issues, e-assessment, and so on, really to renew education. And we need to start discussion within the institution for change, but also with companies to support the change. What are we talking about? And this will be further explored this afternoon, is that we need supporting systems of education under the headings synchronous hybrid education, blended learning, and online and distance education. Often hybrid education and blended learning are used similar, or there is some overlap maybe, but I think the main distinction factor is that hybrid education is always combined online and campus education, as blended is a combination of online and face-to-face education. So these three elements, and what we need to do after the corona crisis as next steps, every educational institution needs to reconsider its own educational model. Most urgently, educate your educators on what is quality online education. Have educators shift more from provider to developer, and evaluate and learn, and doing so by to further innovate your education. Now, we support this within EDTU, amongst others, by a portal where we share different models of online education and support in online education. We have a model on quality assurance for online education, which is called e-excellence. So you can check out this this website on 35 benchmarks of quality education. And new, and that is what we are continuing to talk about today, is our project called Digital Pro, which is which we submitted under the call by the European Commission on Corporations for Innovation and Exchange, partnerships for digital education readiness. The focus is on enhancing online distance and blended learning. And in our project, we therefore bring together experts from universities, well known for research and innovation in digital education, to share our expertise and then prepare and valorize this into continuing professional development on these three formats of education, but also addressing next to these three, the student readiness for digital learning and at policy level, institutional policies and strategies. So this is the full focus of Digital Pro. What we in the end want to deliver is a forecast to educational needs, exchange of expertise, but mostly the design, plan and develop continuing education courses, enabling anyone involved in course and curriculum development and adapting to hybrid, blended and online distance education. The partnership are well-known experts from these universities, so European-wide, and we started actually the project 1st of April for 2 years. So without further ado, I would like to go to Wiebe Dijkstra, who will give us talk about the focus on blended education and Digital Pro, and after that we will go to Abel Sangra on online education. So I will stop sharing my screen now and go back to my system of Zoom. Hello, I'm back again.
I've started to share my screen.
Good, thanks. So please, Wiebe, you can continue.
Okay, well, welcome. This part is about blended education and especially the European maturity model for blended education. This is something we have developed in the last, I think, 4 years, and this will also be the basis for the Digital Pro part, the blended part of Digital Pro. So my name is Wiebe Dijkstra and I'm from Delft University of Technology. And if you have any questions, my contact details are at the bottom of the slide, so don't hesitate to contact me. Well, Embed is a strategic partnership, and it's all about introducing innovation in higher education and especially blended learning. And what we did, we've created a reference model for developing blended learning and also implementing blended learning. And we've did it in a partnership with the different universities and universities of applied science in Europe. And these are the partners. So you see KU Leuven from Belgium, Aarhus University from Denmark, DCU from Dublin, Ireland, Tampere from Finland, EATU and the University of Edinburgh, and of course Delft University. But first, blended learning. What is blended learning? Well, it's a bit of an umbrella term, but it consists of a lot of different things. And this sheet shows a lot of different things. So for example, we have the computer here, but also face-to-face education, studying in your own time, going on the internet, online discussions, so a lot. To make it a bit more concrete, we also defined blended learning and blended education in the Embed project. So blended learning, we see this as a learning as a result of a deliberate, integrated combination of online and face-to-face learning activities. So really what students are doing online in their computer and also face-to-face, usually on the campus. Then we have blended teaching. And this is designing and facilitating blended learning activities. And it's mostly what educators, lecturers, teachers do. And the last thing is blended education. And this is more the formal context of blended learning that is determined by policies and conditions. So this is mostly what an institution can do to facilitate the blended learning. Okay, let's go deeper into the European maturity model for blended education. Well, first of all, maturity is not the same as quality. It looks alike, but it's not precisely the same. And it's important to stress this because this is a maturity model and not a quality model. What do we mean by maturity? So especially the continuous improvement is important in maturity. What we did in this maturity model, we defined 3 levels, namely the course level, program level, and institution level. And for each of these levels, we defined dimensions. So what, for example, on course level, what should a mature course look like? What kind of things you have to deal with? And now I will talk about each of these 3 levels shortly, and I will show which kind of dimensions we have. Well, first, the course level. This is everything in the course level, and I will explain them shortly. On the right-hand side, we have the course design process, and this is everything what has to do with course design. So for example, the sequence of blended learning activities, what kind of learning activities you will do online and what kind of learning activities do you do face-to-face, but also the selection of blended learning tools. What kind of tools do you want to use in your blended learning course? Maybe a learning environment or a voting tool or a discussion board or something especially else. And when designing a blended course, it's important to also make decisions on what kind of tools you want to use. Below that, we have the course interaction, and it's really what kind of interaction do you have in your course? Is this only interaction between learners and the course content? And how does the instructor fit in this interaction? And maybe also the peers do have interactions on themselves. So interaction is also a part of designing a good blended course. Then we have course flexibility. And this is really about how much flexibility do the students have? How much can they determine by themselves? How flexible is the course? Are there a lot of set moments, or do they can study on their own time, on their own pace? And the last part is course experience. And this includes things like, for example, the student learning. Does the course facilitate self-regulated learning, for example? Study load. Is this well aligned? So if you have like with blended learning, what you sometimes see is that teachers add a lot of nice videos and activities and books, and it becomes too much. So it's also important to consider the study load when you're designing a blended course. And the last part is the inclusiveness. Is the course also inclusive? So for example, in the learning environment, do you offer subtitles for a video? But also, do you make sure that the different, for example, cultural backgrounds of the students are taken into consideration when designing the course? So I'm going a bit more into detail about the study load. This has to do with the credits of the course. And it has also to do with the online activities and the face-to-face learning activities, so that you take them both into account when designing a course. And what I show next is an example of what the maturity, how you describe the maturity in this case of the study load. So for each of these dimensions, we've developed a short description. So in this case, the match between the intended and the achieved study load. And then per dimension, we also have 3 indicators. So in the level 1, the study load is based on a guess. Well, that's not very mature. Level 2, it's calculated based on experience, like previous year. And the different course elements, so the online learning activities and the face-to-face learning activities, exam preparations are taken into consideration. And then level 3, comprehensive, is the highest level of maturity. So it's based on calculated based on data and experience. So for example, also data from the learning management system from previous years. All course elements are taken into consideration. And the last part, the study load is monitored, evaluated, and changed based on qualitative and quantitative data. So this is really the mature part, so that you learn what you do based on data and you adapt your practices. Well, and how does this works in practice? Well, for example, this is an example of guidelines on calculating the student workload. This is something you can use to calculate the study workload. And also, for example, in Delft University, we have a couple of guidelines. So for example, for videos, what we usually see based on the data is that students, it takes 3 times the duration of the video to study the video. because students pause, you rewind, you watch again. So a 5-minute video takes 15 minutes study time. And also reading, for example, a textbook, students, if they really want to study a textbook, they can read only 7 pages per hour. So these kinds of guidelines can help to make a more educated guess on how much time students really spend on the course. And in a high mature course, you also monitor this, for example, based on data from the learning management platform, based on surveys, based on interviews by the students, and based on that data, adjust the study load. So make it more or less depending on how much the study load actually is. Okay, then for the digital product, we're also going to look at the COVID-19 situation. So again, these are the dimensions of the course level. But what we see, for example, in the course design process during COVID-19, the selection of blended learning tools in Delft, we saw that a lot of tools were being used without, without a good consideration if the tools are really, we can use the tools, for example, due to the GDPR. But this is something which changed based on COVID-19. And also, for example, the course interaction, the interaction in the face-to-face time now takes place online. So the interaction also changes based on the COVID-19 crisis. So these are things we want to take into consideration when we're going to work on the digital process, and also give guidelines, design principles for teachers how to tackle these kind of things. Next part is the program level. And then we talk about, for example, the program design process. Program coherence is about how are the different courses in the program aligned. And the same thing also, the alignment and coherence of blended tools. Are also the tools in the program aligned? So for example, does each course uses its own, for example, voting system or conference system, or are those aligned within the program? Another example is the course of program experience. That also has to do with student learning. Is the self-regulated learning of the students also integrated in the whole program? So for example, in the first year program, there is less it's more like taking the students by the hand, and later on when they are in a master's, for example, it's more like self-regulated learning. Study load is also is the study load between the different courses aligned, and also is inclusiveness aligned within the whole program. And then of course we also have the flexibility in the program, and I will give some examples of that. So for example, are the students able to select courses themselves, maybe a track or a specialization? Can they choose of the mode of delivery? Can they choose between a part-time, full-time variant, or maybe they can also study at another university? So this is the dimensions and the indicator for program flexibility. And again, what you see in the first level, there is no deliberate program flexibility. Second level, there is deliberate program flexibility. The learners have some opportunities to adapt their program. And in the last part, the flexibility is based on evidence or experience. And again, it's monitored, evaluated, and changed based on the quantitative and qualitative data. So that's really the mature part, that you constantly take a look at your own practice and then adapt based on the data. So this is an example from Delft. This is one program, and students have the possibility to choose between different tracks. So there's flexibility, for example, in this case, on the different topics they're going to discuss. This is one from Utrecht University. The students can choose between a full-time variant or a part-time variant, for example, when they also work. So this also offers more flexibility for the students. And this is another example from Delft University. We have a virtual exchange program, and this means that students can also follow program or courses from another university. So they can, for example, well, you see it in this picture from Wageningen University. Students from Delft can follow a couple of courses there and get credits for that one. And this offers also more flexibility, because now the students can also follow courses which are not offered in Delft. Then the program, COVID-19. What I said earlier, an example how this interferes with the program level is, again, the blended learning tools in a program are not aligned anymore, at least in Delft, because some teachers are using Zoom, some other using virtual classroom from a learning environment, some are using MS Teams. So it's like a sort of a mess, and it makes it harder for the students to study in this in the programs. So this is also something we will tackle in the Digital Pro project. The last level is the institution level, and here we have 8 dimensions. So, for example, institutional support. Sorry, are there any questions, or maybe we can do that in the end? So, for example, institutional support. Is there a help desk, for example, if teachers have questions? Is there a clear strategy on blended education? Sharing and openness are, for example, best practices and materials shared within the institution so that people can also learn from each other. Professional development, are possibilities for the teachers or lecturers to also, for example, follow a course or a workshop on how to create video or how to teach in an online setting. Then we have quality assurance. So what we saw in Delft is that, for example, the online part of a blended course, so how are the videos or how is the learning environment, was not taken into consideration with the course surveys at the end of a course. So that's also important with the blended course that you, or with the quality assurance, that you also make sure that also all the aspects of a blended course are taken into consideration. Then we have the governance, how to make sure that also the, for example, strategy and the processes, the blended processes are well executed in the institution. Then finances, is there any money? And the last thing, facilities. For example, is there a TV recording studio to record videos? Or now we're dealing with hybrid education. Are there facilities for hybrid education? So some examples for the professional development. Is there continuous professional development? Is there also recognition for teachers who do that? And are they able to learn new skills? So this is again from the maturity model. And again, what you see here, for example, is that also what you usually do not see is that the blended learning activities of staff are recognized and valued by the institution. So some examples, this is from Delft, this is our teaching lab. And when we go back to campus, this is usually a place where teachers come together, where they can learn from each other. And we have the best coffee in campus, so that also really helps. And what we do here, for example, we offer workshops, but also, for example, meet and eat lunch lectures where they can learn from each other is also offered in this building. And these are some examples of workshops we offer. So, for example, blending your education, how to create a blended course, but also augmented virtual reality, or how to create a video yourself, writing a script, all kinds of different workshops. And again, some examples from COVID-19. What we see is that we, for example, facilities, we need other facilities or more facilities. So facilities also includes digital tools. So we, for example, need more tools for online collaboration. So since a couple of months, we now have MS Teams at Delft, and that makes it a lot easier to collaborate and to work together. And something else, for example, institutional support. These, moving to online or remote education, has also, we did a lot to support the teachers. So there's also additional support needed for the teachers. And also on other aspects, for example, finances or professional development, we did a lot of things, but these are a couple of examples on how this model, this embed model, changed based on the COVID-19 situation. Okay, what can you do with the embed model? Well, we've created a self-assessment tool, and there you can make see where you stand as an institution or a program or a course. And this can also, this gives a nice of a spider graph, and it can also give an indication on where do you want to improve. So it's a sort of a self-assessment tool which helps you to become more mature in a course or program or in an institution. Okay, I have a couple of more minutes, I think. The next steps, if you want to continue or get started with embed, what can you do? Well, we've created a self-assessment tool, and on the right-hand side, you see an example. So you can give a score and see where your stand is, for example, in your course. And then at the end, you get a nice overview of where you stand and where you can improve. We've also published recently the implementation guidelines. And what we did there is per dimension. So for example, the course design process, or like the sequence of blended learning tools, we also wrote one page with models, with guidelines, with tips, with tricks on really how to make the next step, for example, in your course or program or institution. There's also a MOOC available on FutureLearn. This is a self-paced MOOC, a massive open online course. So if you like, you can just go there and start with the MOOC. I will also share this screen, this PowerPoint, and this will be also distributed. So you can also click the links and then just get started. The MOOC is more of an introduction on the embed model and also gives some nice examples per dimension. And the next thing is also Digital Pro. So we're going to build further upon this embed model and improve it based on the COVID-19 situation. And this is my last slide. Again, if you want to have more information, you can go to the website. All these materials are also there. And of course, you can also contact me if you like. This is my email address and also my Twitter handle. So hope to see you online. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And clearly, embed will be a very important backbone of a Digital Pro project, which we support universities to further enhance their online blended and hybrid education. I always want to emphasize also that online education is certainly not meant only as an alternative to the traditional education. It's also in times of a pandemic, it's in general an enhancement of education. So it is now directly related with COVID, but we are talking about systems of enhancing education in general. The hybrid education part was a pity, but the experts on hybrid education were not available today. We will certainly come back on that some other time. We would like to continue now with the other part of the Digital Pro project, which is on expertise on online education, which is covered by Albert Sangera from the UOC University in Catalonia.
Thank you very much, George. I'm very glad to be here with all of you. In order to not to waste a lot of time, I'm going to share the screen with you, hoping that you can see it easily.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So as we only have 20 minutes, I will go through some of the slides. Just in the case that you would need to read what is there written, you will have the copy of the PowerPoint, so don't worry about that. Okay, so the idea is to talk about the quality of online education in the post-pandemic time, and I will just address some ideas about the historical emergency that COVID-19 has supposed. We will talk about online education because since a long time ago, we are looking for some kind of clearliness about what online education really is. And then I will share with you 10 tips to improve online teaching and learning. And I will also refer to the Digital Pro project on online education and some closing remarks. So COVID-19 is a historical emergency because for the first time, all the institutions, educational institutions had to close in most of the countries. And this was something that didn't happen before. And it means it means for us to feel absolutely I want not to say disrupted, but absolutely challenged at any levels. So Uruguayan poet, that's Mario Benedetti, said, I have translated that from the Spanish to the English, then when we thought we had all the answers, suddenly all the questions were changed. This was written some years ago, but I think this is the situation we felt in March, April last year, with most of our institutions were closed and we needed to manage ourselves and education in a different context that we, for most of us, we didn't experience before. So in front of this historical emergency, our action plan in general was that we digitized our teaching, but we just digitized our teaching. As George have mentioned, some of the same components I'm presenting you, I'm not going to stop on that, but it came from an unexpected change. We didn't have any training or preparation for this. We didn't have some important resources. No pedagogical design nor approach was given. And we reflected the same behavior we could find in a physical classroom. So for a lot of people, as we've seen, it was difficult to be understood, especially by the users, students, families, and so on. So what are some of the provisory lessons from the pandemic we have learned? First, that lockdowns don't let the students to attend to educational institutions. So yes, despite a lot of people don't like online education, if we don't have online education, we probably won't have any opportunity to teach or educate our students during this period of pandemic. It's true that we could not plan the reaction, but it could improve later. And we know that digital growth has been the only escape valve, that the digital divide is still a great barrier, we know that. And also that hybridization of learning is already there. In front of this, there is a great threat that could be conformism. And I have taken a sentence of a professor, this is a Chilean professor, that said if they have adapted themselves in a matter of hours or days, they have not adapted well. And this is what it happened. Most of the institutions, they did what they could do, but this is not the solution for the problem. So we need to go beyond the situation. We need to go further the situation we have currently. At the same time, our reflection is that learning is changing, not only by the pandemic. Learning was changing before the pandemic too. And in 2011, Redeker and other people published the work, The Future of Learning, Preparing for Change. And they said that there were some pillars for the future of learning. These pillars were flexibility, personalization, interaction, collaboration, and also informalization. We've seen some of these pillars in the speech from my colleague Viv Dijkstra, because flexibility, interaction, collaboration are elements of the new ways to approach learning. I don't say that in the past they were used, they were not used, but currently for the next future of learning, these elements are absolutely necessary. And we should keep an eye on informalization too, because learning happens even outside our institutions. And these institutions should be very aware about this fact in order to provide good opportunities for learning to everyone. I also say that there are 4+1 catalysts for the metamorphosis of learning, for this change in learning. First, the connected networks that enable connected learning. Second, empowerment of learners. They could do things that they couldn't do before. The overcoming of time and space barriers, even if in this particular situation, it seems that we didn't overcome the time barrier because everything has to be synchronous, but we can do that. Fourth, the acceptance of the existence of an unconscious, informal, invisible, and silent learning that is happening too. And finally, I should add a new one, that is the discontinuity or intermittence generated by the situation of the pandemic. All these elements are catalysts that are facilitating or enabling the change, the metamorphosis of learning. With the pandemic, of course, changes have sped up. And we are facing all these changes that we try to manage them, to handle them accordingly. We find them that are overcoming us. So in this context, online education is still looking for some clearness. Online education is always a fuzzy concept. Zhao mentioned that online education and its variants such as online instruction, teaching, distance education, distance learning is a big umbrella that covers a wide array of different practices with vary a great deal in terms of quality. And that's true, and even it's more because its definition depends usually of everyone's use. Sometimes online education is traditional distance education using new technologies. Sometimes it's e-learning with a strong technology-based approach. Sometimes it implies synchronous and asynchronous solutions, or maybe not. It can be understood as a simple replica of classroom lectures, usually based on video lectures, or as a PDF delivery model, or as an accessible repository of documents. So you can see that online education sometimes behind the same umbrella, there are a lot of different understanding of what it is. So all this leads to a considerable confusion for those people who are really interested in it for the first time, and they have reached the concept of online learning in this particular moment. From our perspective, quality online education should be planned, organized, demanding, and responsible. Just in one word, I could summarize these 4 ones in saying strategic. Strategic is what online education should be. It's not just an answer, a response to something that is happening. It's something that should be planned, that should be envisioned in a way that could be developed from a strategy, because it's important, because it will be useful, because it has to respond to all the elements of quality. At the same time, this strategic online education will allow flexibility, personalization, interaction, and collaboration. 4 of the elements that we have seen that are the pillars of the future of learning. Finally, if all this is strategic, allows these elements, it will become sustainable, accessible, and also innovative, because we need to be sustainable. There are a lot of experiences and initiatives that started by developing a particular online model, but they weren't be sustainable because they were only designed for a particular moment, for a particular situation. So at your right in the screen, you can see a figure that we call the top triangle. It's created by Tony Bates and myself, and we said that there are 3 main elements in order to create a quality online education model. First is technology, second is pedagogy, and third is organization. No one of them are more important than the other ones, but all 3 have to be interrelated, because all 3 are influencing each other. And at the very middle, we will find this strategy. So thinking on which kinds of technology we will use, thinking on the kinds of pedagogies we are going to use too, but also how we will be organized in order to facilitate that to our students. This has been one of the problems of most of the institutions in the last months, that they have embrace online education without being organized in order to provide a quality online education. So this is something that should be thought in detail for the very next time. Online education and virtualization, or the digitization of teaching, are very different things. So we should identify the different concepts that are behind these words. Online education continues to grow around the world, and there are high quality models. In fact, for instance, in my university, we didn't need to change a lot during this pandemic situation. Instead of this, our number of students has increased. So now we are close to 80,000 students because they have identified a model that works and that could be flexible enough, that could be adaptable enough to the needs of the students in these particular situations too. So an educational model that should take into consideration the activity of the student in the very middle. So we put the student in the very middle of our educational models, but we need in online education to manage that from the activities. Activity-based model with promoting participation and engagement of the students and developing a continuous assessment model. One of the problems a lot of institutions have faced during the last month is how we are going to assess our students. And the problem was that they try to, as George said, try to copy on the way we are assessing in face-to-face and trying to do the same online. No, you need to change the things that you are doing. You are going to change the context. So you need to change the strategies and the means that you are using in order to get similar or the same results. So around this student activity, we have a group of teachers that is giving support, guidance, and interaction to the students. Interaction between students, teachers is key, is crucial for that. And a set of learning resources that will enable them to access to content. They will have multiple formats, and they will be based in diversified technology too. And finally, the third element, the third main element, is to have a networked community where you can identify all your classmates or your colleagues that you can carry out collaboration, teamwork, knowledge building, and create a sense of group, even if you are working alone. So working in collaboration, teamwork is facilitating to avoid the sense of isolation of the students when they are working alone. And these are the basic elements for a quality educational model. There will be a number of different models related to this one, but probably we think that this is one of the models that are working much better because the students are saying that they are very satisfied on it, and we are providing a lot of elements. This model is usually put into practice in a fully asynchronous system, but it can usually be adapted also to other synchronous situations. So to find a good balance between synchronicity and asynchronicity is something that will be key in the very next future in order to design good online education models. At UOC, we reacted to the pandemic doing different activities and different actions. What we thought is that we should put our knowledge on the hands of all the people that could need it during this period. So we started in March 2020 by identifying 10 tips. I'm going to tell you about them, 10 tips in order to improve your online teaching. And we also developed these 10 tips in a series of webinars that were called Docencia no presencial de emergencia, translated was emergency remote teaching, because we always said this is not online education, this is just remote teaching. So you should move from remote teaching to online education if you really want to put in practice a quality model. And in September 2020, we provide the summary of this webinars in a book that you can download for free. As my colleagues have said, you will have this PowerPoint presentation, and you can download it from the link that you will find in the different slides. So the 10 tips for improving online teaching and learning, I'm going through them just to show you them. You can read them later. One is to select appropriate tools to organize and help the students to get ready. And the project we are presenting today is going to work on that, on the readiness of the students. The third tip is to allocate time to course design or redesign, because a good design and planning are essential in online education. The fourth tip is elaborate a set of activities, because as I said, it's important to develop an activity-based model. The fifth is associate a set of resources to the activities, because content has to be there, but the basis is not content. So content is becoming subsidiary of the activities. You are going to use content when you need it for developing and for solving the activities. So it makes sense in a particular activity, and it could make another different sense in another activity. The sixth tip is to create active interaction dynamics in the online environment. It's very, very important to carry out collaborative activities to foster also asynchronous interaction among students, and synchronous situation can also be designed if they are essential to. So this balance I have referred before is very important in order to make interaction possible in your environment. The seventh tip is to explain the assessment model, make the assessment criteria explicit, and also the kind of feedback you will provide. So giving feedback to the students is crucial too, in order for them to understand what is the progress they are going on, and to give them the idea of progression, and also at the same time you can get more information about how they are learning, what it is supposed to be learned. So foster continuous assessment, because it makes monitoring of the students easier and also increases student engagement. The eighth tip is to generate social presence. If the students are not used to that, they risk to feel isolated, so don't allow it. Make them feel like they are a part of a community where everyone has the same goal, to learn while they are socializing. And this is an important point when the people say, well, how engage them, how I can motivate them. Okay, make them feel part of a community, make them feel they are doing things with others, make them feel that they need others and others need them too. And this is very important. Sorry. The ninth tip is to develop a student's critical spirit. There is a great opportunity for making them self-aware with your support on the benefits and the risk of using technologies. And finally, the 10th is to work collaboratively with your colleagues too, with the other teachers, because they could help us to define activities, solve doubts, and feel supported. This is very important, and a changing of online teaching practices and resources is also important. And this activity, this webinar, is an example of how we can change our practice, our resources, and the way we are teaching now. So in order to go to the end of the presentation, I would like also to introduce how the digital project will try to face the problems with online education. If the main aims of the projects are the ones that you can see there, but George have mentioned them clearly too, in this particular area of online education, that it's one of these three different scenarios that we mentioned, learning scenarios that we mentioned in the main aims of the project, we are going to aim to design, develop, and implement a continuous professional development course to enhance online and distance teaching and learning in European universities. And to do that, we have expected some outputs: to have an open access report on the state of art of research, innovation, and good practices of online and distance education, and some conclusions related to the COVID-19 context, a compendium of selected best practices in training materials or resources for continuous professional development for online and distance learning, the design of this CPD course for online and distance education, taking into account the needs of teaching staff and the COVID-19 period and beyond. So the course will have a modular structure, and will be designed in alignment with the needs of the universities, a strong concept and relevant learning objectives. The leading design principle is active learning, so students have to participate and get involved in the process of learning. Participants can create content and do assignments that will help them in their work, and this will be one of the ways to be active in the course. The average course workload of a participant will be 30 hours, and a certificate or a credit points will be given. And the course will include a teacher manual that others can use to teach the course themselves. At the end, this particular course on online and distance education will be integrated in the final CPD program for digital education, focusing on the 3 teaching and learning scenarios I mentioned: synchronous, hybrid, blended, and fully online. Student readiness for online learning and institutional change, that are the other 2 aspects that will be also covered by the project. So I will finish my presentation with some closing remarks, and one that is very similar to something that George have mentioned. Do not replicate in presence classroom teaching, please. As you know, the copy is always worse than the original. If you don't believe on that, please look at the pictures. The second one tries to be a copy of the first one, and I don't think they have succeeded. Given different contexts, different combination of strategies are needed. So this is very important. Let's think on a different way to do things. Don't copy what we are doing face to face, because it doesn't work in an online environment. In addition, in case of new partial or total lockdowns, there will be new moments of discontinuity, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes fully online. Intermittence can also be caused by the need of having to teach alternate groups. Sometimes you can do it with synchronous sessions. Sometimes this will be difficult. So the key is to achieve a fluid, smooth transition between in-presence moments and non-presence moments that should be not traumatic, but natural, assumed, and known. So we should work on how to manage and how to handle to move from face-to-face to hybrid or online context without having a traumatic experience for our students. So for most of the people, this will be a first step. But we know that to move forward, you must first take a step. It does not bring you where you want to go, that's true, but it moves you from where you are. And this is very important. The Digital Pro project will try to provide elements in order to move from where you are, in order to look for and to find a new position, a new context in which you will feel comfortable by teaching and learning in different contexts and environments. I would like to finish with another Chilean poet in this case that said, "And one day everything begins again, and the smile returns to be once more the owner of your life." I hope that this will happen as soon as possible, and all of you will be able to start working in the way we prefer, face-to-face, blended or hybrid or online, no matter, you can choose it. Let's look for the freedom for choosing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Albert, for these motivating last remarks, and the pictures will certainly stick to us that were used at the end. We have still some time, well, maybe not officially some time, but let's make some time for some questions if somebody wants to take the floor on that or use the chat. In the meantime, I can also indicate to you that indeed student readiness will be an element to be addressed by Digital Pro, and ED2 is also working on one of the main challenges, which is online assessment. We have a special interest group on online assessment. Outcomes of that, in which we have 17 universities contributing on their online assessment approaches. We will also share with the Digital Pro community, and I guess we can include you all in our communication, our Digital Pro, of which we will have the official kickoff of the project team this Friday to start the two-year project. Any immediate questions for our speakers today? Otherwise, we have, as you know, as I announced before, we have 2 other days in this, 2 other afternoons in this webinar week on the COVID response. Tomorrow afternoon, we start at 1:30, and on Thursday, we will start at 2. If there are no further immediate questions, just then we'd like to thank the speakers of today, Wiebe and Albert, for your contributions. And I want to thank the audience and hope to meet you all again tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And like was indicated, all presentations will be made available at the end of the webinar week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.